Madam President, I'm going to start off first by talking about property tax. First of all, let's be clear. All of us are concerned about property tax. In the bill that was passed by the Finance and Appropriation Committee, initially it started that on October 1st, 2015, 0.3% of the sales tax was going to go into a fund. And then by the end of the fiscal year of July 1st, 2016, or I should say the beginning of the next fiscal year, July 1st, 2016, the money was going to be distributed to 169 towns based upon a formula. So the 0.3%, 100% into the municipal revenue sharing account, and then 100% of that money was going to be redistributed to 169 towns. Before we even had the chance of getting that bill passed, before we even had the chance of having the governor sign it, it got changed. And it got changed to delaying from October 1st to January 1st. Why? We had to balance the budget. So we already took that money out of the municipal revenue sharing account to balance the budget, which is what most of us said was going to happen when you diverted the sales tax. Further, in 2016, some of that sales tax money is going to a few towns. Why? Just because. Just because. So we're not going to redistribute it evenly to 169 towns. We're going to give some to towns before any other town gets it. We're going to give money to some towns. And then we're going to let those 169 towns wait another year before they see money. Why? Because we're broke. So when we said don't trust the state to hold on to the tax revenue, you're never going to see it. And people said, yes, you will. We've already shown before this bill even gets the final passage, we're taking the money that everyone else is paying in for property tax reform, and it's not getting there. I ask you this. If we got a 1.9 or 1.7 billion dollar deficit at the end of 2 years, who really thinks anybody is ever going to see this municipal revenue sharing account if at the time of distribution we have a deficit? I don't. How do we know that? It happened just now. In what you are passing now, you are authorizing $52 million of that tax money to be swiped from the municipal revenue sharing account, put in our pocket because we don't have the discipline to stop spending. That doesn't make any sense, and that's the road we're headed. So then it is said, well, there's a 2.5% cap on spending for towns. So, well, that sounds pretty good, except we don't include borrowing. So all the municipalities have to do is do what we do. If you borrow for everyday expenses, it's not included in that cap. So let them borrow for plowing. Let them borrow for paper clips and desks because it's not included. So it's outside the cap. You're not controlling any budget. You're causing them to do what we do, such that in 5 to 10 years, they're going to be in the same position we are because we said you can't raise your budgets more than 2.5% on your cap unless you borrow, then do what you want to do. What do you think they're going to do? And then we said, let's talk about arbitration. Arbitration is not included in the cap. So I would suggest some towns would say, well, the unions, we want to give you a 2% increase, or your workers' salaries, we want to give you a 2% increase, union, non-workers, union or non-union, doesn't matter, 2% increase. But if I give you that increase, you know what? We're going to be beyond the cap, so this is what we're going to do. I'll tell you I'll give you 1. You ask for 3, we'll go to arbitration, we'll drive the arbitration to 2, let the arbiters award 2, and you know what? It's outside the cap. What are we doing? This isn't going to control budgets. I would suggest to you the exact opposite's going to happen. We are going to encourage borrowing by municipalities. We're going to encourage costly arbitration by municipalities. That's what this is going to do. Let's take that one step further. In some of the big cities, 80% of the population does not reside there as their home. I should say they reside there, but they don't own the home. And if that's true, then the only tax they're paying is on a car tax. It's the only tax. If we cap the car tax and the voters vote for the legislative body that increases the mill rate, but we cap the mill rate, what do they care? They don't care what the mill rate is because they're capped. Let the mill rate go up to 100 mills, 1,000 mills. It doesn't matter because I'm capped. That's my liability. I don't care who's in office or what they're spending it on. It's a crazy system that when you look at the particulars, and we know it because we see it in the state, we have a spending cap. Have we ever followed that spending cap without playing a game? Have we ever said in this legislature, haven't we passed bills that divert funds, stream of revenues before they get into the budget, we divert them? Have we ever borrowed because we couldn't afford it? Yes, we did. They don't even have to think of these things. They could just use our playbook. That's what we're encouraging. And on the transportation side, there isn't a person around this circle or downstairs who's not going to tell you we need a good transportation system in Connecticut. The question is, how are we going to get there? It is what it is, so I'll say for a fact, Republicans put out a plan that said 30 years, $67 billion, no taxes, no tolls, there you go, $2 billion a year, have at it. We don't have a plan in front of us that goes beyond 3 years or 5 years. Not a plan. We don't have a plan in front of us that gives us as much money as we put in our plan in the next 5 years. Our plan starts July 1st if you approve it. So if you're serious about transportation, don't talk about it, do it. Approve our plan and you do it. You get it done. But to talk about it, yeah, everybody wants it. But there is nothing you are voting for today that's going to give you the transportation plan you're talking about. Nothing. Let's be clear. So when you look at this budget, you got to say, gee, what is the policy? What is the policy in this budget and in this implementer? What are we looking at? People complain about high energy costs, especially if you're on fixed income, middle income, low income, high energy costs. So what do? We put in Bridgeport that their utility bills for natural gas is going to go up to pay for a $9 million project in Bridgeport called the Thermal Loop. So they're all going to pay higher energy costs, the exact regressive type of tax and costs that hurts middle and low income, and we're going to raise their tax so we could fund a thermal loop. Are you listening? Are you listening to what the people are saying in this state? Businesses. I will tell you, I did go see Governor Scott when he came to Hartford. And people asked me why I went to go see him. And I went to go see him because you always scout out your opponent, right? That's what you do. We all do it for opposition research, and you do it when you're playing sports. You scout out your opponent. So I went there as not Senator Fasano, as Len Fasano. Although they knew a senator after somebody told him or something, I don't know. But anyway, so I went there. And I listened to his speech. And he said, Connecticut is a beautiful state. It's got tremendous resources. It is an educated state. But they make my job easy. They're raising taxes. I'm lowering taxes at $1 billion a year. I don't have an estate tax. I don't have an income tax. I don't have a LLC filing tax. I have a homestead exemption. And I know, is what he said, if I bring young kids to my state, the parents are going to follow me because they want to be with their kids and they want to be with their grandkids. So if I can afford an opportunity for young kids, I've captured a generation above. I can give you a workforce, and I will tell you there was a lot of aerospace people there. A lot. Majority of the people there were aerospace. I talked to them. And his ideas were to say, why would you go into a state that continually raises taxes, has terrific debt burden, and I don't? That's his pitch. That's his pitch. And people were listening. The question is, are we listening? Are we listening to what people are saying? And it wasn't for any other reason. He's gone to New Jersey, and he's gone to Texas. I think he went to 8 states on Monday, whatever last Monday was. So he's been all over the place, no matter who is in charge of the state. Because, as he puts it, you guys are my customers. I'm going to you. I'm telling you my story because I need you to come to me. That's what he did. And what are we doing here? We put a unitary tax on. We took tax credits away. We're not letting net operating losses be carried forward fully. We're saying we don't want you businesses. Then we say, you're not going anyplace. That's a bunch of rubbish. You're not moving. His argument is pretty simple. The more people I have in my state, and the more businesses that I have in my state, and the more goods and services they pay, that's why their DDS list is almost down to 0. Our list is years out. Their list is down to 0. Why? Because he used the initiative of the tax dollars that people pay in his state for their social services. And I think people around this chamber can agree. The highest use of social services are probably going to be in a state that has a large elderly population like Florida. And their DDS list, waiting list is almost down to 0. This isn't about rich versus poor. This is about using your economic drivers to bring in income so that you can provide the social services that we all want for our constituency, no matter where you live. So the question again is, are we listening? We did Senate Bill 811. Senator Looney and I worked very hard with a bunch of other people downstairs and upstairs to pass the hospital bill. And the idea of that hospital bill was to allow independent docs to compete against hospitals. And in the same breath, 6 weeks later, we tax ambulatory surgical centers. And if they do it in their facility, they're going to get this gross receipts tax. But if they do it in a hospital, they're not going to pay the tax because the hospital pays the tax. What do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to take it out of their pocket when they don't have to? Sure, we exempted out $1 million. I was talking to a New Haven location today about how much their surgical center was. It was $10 million. That's their gross. Well, they're going to go do those in a hospital. We're driving the very independent docs. We say we want you to be independent, to give us good, quality, independent medical care. We're saying, but we want you to go back to the hospitals or we're going to tax you very heavily. What are we thinking about? Are we listening to what people are saying? Do we have our ears open? Then we talk about reducing SAGA and the temporary financial assistance by reducing those people's ability to bury their own kin, their relatives. We cut them to a tune of, listen to this, $800,000. We give $1.5 million raises in the executive branch, but we can't find $800,000 for these people to bury their family. The poorest of the poor, the ones who need the most help. And we'd rather give people making 6 figures in this building more money than we would to give $800,000 so people could be buried with some dignity. Is that the policy? Are we listening to those voices? We have DSS in here who says they can find nursing efficiencies. Go around to these care facilities and find nursing efficiencies. Sounds good. But if they don't, they have a right to cut. What is that? So they're going to go to home and say, listen, you can find nursing efficiencies. Let me look at your schedule. There's no efficiencies you're going to pick up, so we're just not going to give you any more money. Not anymore. We're going to cut you money. Does that make sense to anybody in this room? You don't think that's going to hurt the services they give? When we say we as a state can't find the efficiencies, but we're still not going to fund you fully? That makes no sense to me. And the people hurt are those people who could least afford being hurt. Are we listening to those voices? Are we listening to those voices that come to this building year after year, sit here for hours and hours and hours for the 3 minutes before that bell runs off? We increase the Urban Investment Act under this proposal. We increase it, yet the very business, the Urban Act is the idea, the urban investment, if someone invests in the city's money, they're entitled to a tax credit. And what they do is they take those tax credits and they sell it on the open market. It's good, right? Because cities get developments, the developer sells a tax credit on the market, but who uses the most of those tax credits? Which company has the most initiative to buy that tax credit? The answer is the hospitals. They drive that value up because that's the only credit against the Connecticut hospital tax that you could use. So what did we do? We said, hospitals, you can't use them. So we increased the ability for it to happen, but we decrease the market for which they could be sold on. Effectively, you've hurt the cities by a policy that's inconsistent. They were getting a good dollar for it because it's the only thing. Every single one of the hospitals that you guys represent, every single one, I don't care how small it is, bought these credits. And now we took it away. That's going to drive that market down, that dollar down, which is going to hurt the cities. Are we listening to what we're doing? In the STF, in one section, we took out the quote-unquote lockbox. In another section, we put in the lockbox. I don't even understand that maneuver. I mean, if I try to understand it as a lawyer, I don't understand it. It's either there or it's not there, and it was there, and we took it out, and then we put it back. Maybe so we could say we did it. I don't know. But what we didn't do was do a constitutional amendment. And we all know you could put every lockbox in the world. This budget alone takes money out of that STF fund. The budget some of us are going to vote in favor of in a few minutes actually takes the money out already. Are we listening to what people are saying? Are we listening to the cries that are out there? Are we listening to the people who find it tough every single day to make a living? I don't care what scale they're on. Because their voices have not been heard with this budget and with this implementer. We are doing things that are inconsistent with policies. We are doing things inconsistent with the good of the people of this state. I would argue part of that is the locked door that didn't allow a lot of discussion. But part of it is because this budget is not so much about policies. It's not so much about the future of the state. It is put together just to get through this year. I would tell you, and I would bet this circle, a year from today, we're going to have a deficit in this budget. Not a doubt in my mind. We're going to be in here with a deficit. Not a doubt in my mind. 2 years ago, I said we're going to have the largest deficit again. We'll be wrangling with it. 2 years ago, I said it in this chamber, and I was right. I will say next year we're going to have a deficit, and in 2 years we're going to have a $1.8 billion deficit yet again. We are doing the same things. We're taking money we're putting away from municipalities, and we're not funding items that we should be funding to protect those who are most vulnerable. We need to change. I know the die is cast. I'm not an accountant, but I can count the votes in this room. I know what's going to happen as soon as Senator Looney is through. This budget is going to pass. But there are going to be a lot of questions about this budget from this day forward. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on this budget from this day forward because it is the wrong budget. And it's going to set Connecticut back. Thank you, Madam President.